right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to Breaking Out the Rat Race with NLP. I'm your host tonight. My name is Barney, and I am very happy to have a conversation with my associate Alfred. Just a little bit about Alfred. He is a doer. He is able to show up at the right time, at the right place. He's a great thinker, but he's not someone that would have a lot of chattiness. So it is with a bit of NLP to be able to get Alfred to show up tonight. I think he's going to be talking about a topic that actually, perhaps the timing is very good. We're talking about people feel that they are trapped, that they don't have a choice. They have to be able to work with circumstances. And so he has a very interesting perspective about this, which is the topic for tonight, which is, I think, is very apt for our time. So before we get into the details, I'm going to get all of you guys to be able to share this video or share this live event. You can actually go ahead right now, click the share button so they can help us to get our message out to as many people as possible. So that's Alfred again. And tonight we're hopefully going to be able to wrap up the session in about 14 minutes. So Alfred, we have to work much harder tonight. Okay, and so let's get the people to know a little bit more about the topic for tonight. And it's going to be very interesting topics that we have. I'm very glad to have this conversation with you, Alfred. It's something. Some of the topics here is actually something that I personally feel strongly about, and I definitely have gone through, and I can relate with some of the points that you're about to make. So okay, so Alfred, maybe you can give us an idea about before we go into the topic for tonight, right?
Yep.
What was the source of inspiration for you to come up with this topic, with this topic about getting out the rat race?
I guess there are several points of interaction or that I've been exposed to recently.
Yeah.
Of course, through the internet and social media, through the ads, through what people are talking about, and also the conversation that I'm having with people, whether it's participants, that we work with. There seems to be a common theme that shows up lately about them sort of wanting to get out of that rat race, or that hamster wheel syndrome that we are running on this treadmill. And so I thought, okay, maybe let me share my own journey a little bit, and hope that offers a different perspective from what we have been seeing on the internet.
Yeah. Okay. So it's good that you are bringing this up, because what we are sharing tonight is highly subjective, in a sense. It's talking about your journey, your perspective, and how you have made NLP work for you, and how you have applied the things that you have learned over the years, and how it has worked for you. It does not mean it applies to everybody. It doesn't explain every phenomenon relating to this topic, but it is something that's personal to you and is authentic to you in a sense.
Yep.
Yeah. So we're talking about, first thing up is about debunking the rat race from your perspective. And then we're going to move down to this idea about how do we actually get out of the rat race. And for you, your suggestion is about mastering ourselves. This idea about notion about self-mastery. If you know yourself, you are a lot more capable of being able to kind of like steer yourself in the direction that you want to go. Yeah. And then the myth and trap of the fact. This is a very interesting topic. I'm going to enjoy talking to you about this. The myth and the trap of life purpose. And I'm sure we're gonna spend quite a bit of time around there, because there are people who are stuck in this. This is not kind of like, I don't think this is the metaphor is not like a rat race. It's more like they're stuck in some kind of a catch-22 situation, right? They're constantly in this loop. They're in the loop, right? In a constant, like the never-ending loop, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're sharing about your perspective or your application of self, evolving yourself through multiple intelligence, which is the thing that's at the heart of our methodology. And you have your own secret recipe tonight, which is the 3 Ps of building a fulfilling life journey. This is going to be your so-called your masterpiece for tonight, and we're looking for. So let's get the ball rolling.
Yep. Let's get going.
Yeah. So this idea about debunking the rat race. My question for you is, what is your kind of like your insight, right, that help you to shift this perspective?
If I were to look back, probably about 10 years back, shifting, coming from a corporate or executive kind of background, and then I was at a point in that kind of people call it midlife or whatever crossroad that you want to call it. So I was at that juncture of questioning myself: is this what I want to continue for the next 5 to 10 years? And back then I didn't know, but after as I progressed, subsequently learning NLP with you guys and working with you all closely, then I kind of saw what happened. So I was in that cycle, in that corporate period for about, I think, close to 10 years. So there was a lot of me hopping around. So I was at that point trying a lot of things, hopping around, different work, different jobs. But then I wasn't really clear where I was going or even what I was doing. So to me, it's like I'm living this daily life of just going to work, coming back, the same old things. So I get kind of like bored. I get kind of like stuck and also a bit worried, like, is this what is meant to be for the rest of my life?
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the kind of the starting point of how I got to know what personally how I was in that rat race.
Yeah. So it sounded like you were in the rut. You were in the rut whereby you know what things are not working or things that are not a situation you are not happy, but you don't know what exactly that would make you happy.
Yes.
Yeah. So could you share with us I'm sure you're going to bring about and talk about when did you start debunking? When did the debunk started? And what was the event or the story that led to the debunking, in a sense?
So during that period, I tried a lot. So I attend different courses, and I was following a lot of different things that people tell me what to do. So I was constantly referencing things that's outside of me, and there wasn't a reference for me to say this is it. So I noticed that pattern going on for a couple of years. And so this thing about looking out, but I wasn't very sure exactly what I want until when I started learning NLP. The first thing in the outcome setting is what do you want to get out? Which is a tough question. It took a while for me to start putting words to it.
Yeah.
Because most of the time I look at my career is driven by the things that I want to avoid.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of things I want to stay away from. I don't want to work in a certain kind of environment, in a certain industry, working with a certain type of boss. Yeah. But then what is it that is driving? I mean, what gets me motivated.
Yeah.
That's the part I
You
wasn't
know
sure.
what you don't want, but being glued to this what you don't want, right, does not automatically mean that you know what you want.
What I want, yes. Yep.
Yeah. So the first part of the debunking started when you kind of look inside of yourself. You start asking and turning instead what looking inwards. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. So could you share a little bit more? What were some of the things that you have discovered within, or that helped you to kind of start, getting yourself outside of what we call the system? So
Yep.
this picture was trying to give you back, and we are trying to fit ourselves into a system, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we are packed. We're trying to find something to fit ourselves into a system, basically. Yeah.
So even till now, I mean, now I'm more conscious of it, but back then there's a lot of it comes out in this kind of expression where I hear people saying, oh, this is how the reality works, this is how the world is run. So I have to fit in, but having paused myself there, during the program itself, when I started learning NLP, I realized that it's more of a belief than a reality. The reality was what the masses advocate, but I took it in as the sort of, there's nothing else I can do. I just have to follow what the system demands. And at the same time, I find that I'm losing a lot of control. There wasn't any sense of control in my life. It's like I'm just giving away my own, surrendering my own will or power, whatever you call it, to what the system demands,
Right.
So the typical, I mean, in the Singapore culture, probably the common pattern of what we have been taught is, you have to finish the education as much as possible. After graduation, get a well-paying job. Then by a certain age, start a family, and so on and so on. So the narrative is how it has been so strongly influencing my career decision, that I felt there's a constant struggle. I was questioning, is that really it? Or is this thing my own game that I'm playing?
Okay. All right. So it's one of the things that I enjoy having conversation with you. At the same time, I find that I had to unpack what you said. So for some people, they would love this because there's a lot of depth in what they're saying. But at the same time, for some other people, it's like, what is the point here? Okay, so I'm going to do my best. My understanding is that, and I think a lot of people can relate with what you're saying, that is that this is happening on the subconscious level. We are drilled into this cultural mold or expectation, right? That this is the way life goes. Life goes in, right? And if we are not even aware that that's the very thing that's driving us. And of course, when you hit this midlife crisis, and and then you're not happy, and you're finding yourself trying to fit everywhere, and if you don't fit any of these things completely, you feel that you're out of place, and you're not whether this is the life for you. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. So when you started the debunking process, when you look within yourself, and then and so what can you just elaborate a little bit more? Is what was the point where you started to see yourself getting comfortable with your own tune, your own pace of life? Right. That means you are aware that you are somewhat mismatching what the expectation is, and you're comfortable with it.
It came to a point where I stopped measuring myself with what others have that I don't.
Yeah.
So this thing about fitting in, because I keep benchmarking myself to the standards that has been advocated in the media, or I've been told by other people. So I stopped that game, stopped measuring myself or even benchmarking my success based on what I don't have that others have.
And are you saying that helps? That was the part that kind of starts setting you free.
Setting me into a different direction.
Okay. So you dare to, in other words, you dare to hit the path in the path that it is not so-called mainstream. You know that you are in somewhat going in the path that is not conventional. It's not the wise old advice that people normally would see or give, and you're comfortable with that.
It takes a lot of work in the subsequent years to help me define or create my own version of what success is, rather than following in the shadows of what we have been told.
Okay, so I think that we are finally getting to a place where we can kind of land it. Okay, create my own version of success. But I can see what you're saying. There's a nice logical flow. Yeah, midlife crisis, and then you started to look within because you're constantly looking out there, trying to benchmark, to fit yourself in.
Yep.
At some point, you start to stop measuring yourself, or benchmarking yourself with others, and then start to work on yourself and start creating your own version, your own self-reference.
Yes.
Not other reference, self-reference version of what success is for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah. So I think it's time for us to move on to the next.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So as you were saying that it took quite a number of years for you to start working on yourself, so that I mean, you are aware, aware about yourself, the words like that, you are fitting in. After that, now I'm going to create my own version of my success. However, you do need to be able to create enough substance, right, within yourself, right, in order to be able to see that you are able to move in your own version of success, right? So could you tell us a little bit more about mastering yourself to what is the rationality behind mastering ourselves to unglue ourselves from the rat race?
So in the first place, I'm not against people following whatever that's out there. The issue or challenge is, coming from my own personal experiences, that we are not clear the areas that are truly important in our lives. So in terms of exactly defining what is our wants and needs, and being clear what kind of value we stand for, the kind of person that I am. So these are the areas that I started to go.
I'm sorry, you were saying start being clear of
what is truly important in my life, what I value, and a sense of who I am as a person that I want to be.
What were some of the things that you use, or what are something that you use, or the steps that you've taken to begin to be clear of what's important to you?
So one of it that I've learned in one of the advanced NLP program is using this mission statement that I've been, even after 10 over years, I'm still revisiting it, using it as a process to help me define what are the areas that are truly important in my life, to get clear of it. So that was the mechanics behind.
All right.
Yeah.
So for the rest of people who are listening tonight, there is part of our program that we talk about essentially getting people to define what's their mission in life. There's a process, there's a step-by-step process. But I think that the idea about formulating a mission requires a certain level of maturity. And when I say maturity, we're not talking about, and I'm just sharing my perspective on it. Because when we talk about getting people to set a mission in life, right? A 20-something, and you ask them to set a mission in life, we can pretty much predict what kind of thing that they will say: a car, a house, and so on and so on. So that's my mission. However,
that's also what I used to.
Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
It's almost like you're setting a mission with your blinkers on. You have a blinkers, and then your blinkers is on. So part of the work that we need to do is to unfold or to remove that blinkers. And that is not something that you can do like that, right? It requires staging, step-by-step process. So in the program itself, I guess in our program, there are what we call stages that people go through, so that eventually they are able to get to understand, to slowly peel off the blinkers. There are different layers of blinkers to get to a point where they can start looking at their mission that goes further beyond in life, and it's not just serving themselves, but they see themselves being part of something larger. So, so for you, right, what helped you to set your mission? When you think about it right now, what helped you to uncover your mission?
If I were to really zoom in, exactly what is it that enabled me to kickstart this process is acknowledging the things that I've done. And so rather than discarding that past experiences, I use that as a way to evaluate and see how I can turn some of this, they could be relevant and help me in terms of moving forward with more clarity, direction and purpose.
You're trying to highlight and acknowledge your past experience.
Past experiences.
Okay.
Even things that seem like a minor milestone.
Yeah.
And so these are the things I kind of bring it in. And with that framework, I look at it, use that to assess and evaluate how can it be relevant and useful for me. Maybe it's just the way I need to adopt or approach it differently this time around.
Okay. Does it mean that could I say that you're looking at somewhat what are your strengths? What are the things that you seem to be drawn towards, or something that you do pretty well, and you want to be able to kind of take that and express it more?
Yes. So one of the things I'm looking at is the common things that I find myself getting into. So it could be is a particular activity that I seems to drawn into.
Yeah.
Which I eventually discover writing is one of them. And so even though it's interesting because when it comes to writing in my school days, my language sucks, as in, education wise. And it's interesting later on that becomes one of my core channel of how I enhance it and work on it.
Right.
Yeah. So identifying what are some of the common things that I keep going back, regardless of the circumstances and situation, there seems to be a common topic or common activity. So I start there.
Okay. So part of it was actually to begin to go back into your memory and highlight and acknowledge those past experiences that could be your strength, could be places that you find a lot of joy, or things that you are passionate about.
Yep.
And then to find these things, to find a commonality, and then drawing them together and see what does that say about you? What are things that telling you that you could actually nurture it a bit more, or to or even expand it a little bit more. Yeah. So yeah, I guess now is a good time for people to get to see a little bit your mission. You'll be talking about it. Yeah.
So let's give a little bit time for people to digest.
Yeah, obviously. Okay. So I think that that's something that well, it definitely, I guess it gets you to wake up in the morning knowing that there are many parts of this that you are needing to work on.
Oh yes. So this, by the way, this is, I don't know, at least the 10th version that I've updated or changed over the years.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one of the questions that you brought up early on is you turn this mission into a process. Could you just kind of share with us what typically, I mean, you turn into a process, right? How does that work? What do you do? You know,
I set myself like every 4 months to revisit rather than once a year. Because especially now things are changing so rapidly. So it's good for me to actually check in based on this. And what I do with it is, I mean, as I'm reading it, I'm also visualizing myself how I would show up in that kind of environment or condition.
Okay.
And then, so while I'm doing that, also I'm paying attention to how I'm experiencing it, you know, in terms of feelings, emotion, what my body is telling me, and of course the thoughts that or any new insights that comes with it. So I would spend like I'll make deliberate time to do that. Sometimes maybe outdoor, find a quiet spot, just go through it, connect with it, mentally, emotionally, physically as well.
Yeah.
And also on a daily basis, going with a form of intention in terms of when I wake up, what would be the kind of intention that would support me to express all these qualities. So it becomes a sort of a daily practice in action rather than just look good on words and paper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm just trying to, you know, get down to what are some of the essence you talk about, right? Some of your personal qualities, or this notion about benevolence and leadership qualities. And you come out of a space of trying to help people express their goodness, and you can't do that by bringing the ugly, I mean, dysfunctional side of yourself into it, but the healthier version of yourself too. You know, so you want to be able to give people power to empower people, to give people power to do things. And to create a more humanistic community, to build a more humanistic community in that sense. Okay, so based on what you have said earlier on, right? Based on what you have said earlier on, and I just thought that maybe I could add another slide. Just give me a second.
Sure.
Yeah, and so
while you're doing so, let me just look at what people are asking or commenting or sharing.
Go ahead. One is every 4 months to review your mission. Start visualizing. scenarios. And the other part is setting daily intentions. To support
this bigger picture or mission.
Your mission, to support your mission. Okay. Did I miss out anything? Is there anything else you want to add?
Essentially, is really about how I can or I want to show up on a daily basis, whether it's in a meeting or in a training, or whether I'm doing work or even on my own when nobody is looking. I'm consciously tuning in and moderating myself in that manner. So it becomes a discipline for me that guides my decision, that guides how my actions, behavior, guides the way I communicate with the people around me.
Okay. So that's what you mean by turning your mission into a process. So there is a somewhat of a 4-month kind of review, and you start visualizing what kind of scenario or opportunities you want to get yourself into.
Yes.
Or what are some of the scenarios that you tend to be in, how you're going to show up there in those situations. The other one is setting daily intentions, which is there is in our NLP community, we have a daily intention setting and self-acknowledgement, and so that you can actually align your intention with that will support the key objectives or key projects that you're handling. Then you're able to kind of align how you're going to show up there by setting your intention and doing your self-acknowledgement daily. And then outside of those things, you are also observing and adjusting yourself to align yourself to your mission. Could you just elaborate a little bit more? What do you mean by observe and adjust yourself? Could you give
some examples? Or because I'm trying to be more aware of the default mode that I tend to be on. So like, let's say if I'm just doing stuff on writing, and I tend to have certain habits around that, like even now I still tend to look at other people's work as a reference to begin with.
Okay.
And so knowing that seems to be a kind of like my usual habit that helps me. Sometimes I deliberately do the opposite, like starting clean and fresh without any reference, and let whatever that is in me to emerge and put it on. I mean, I have a way to document all my notes and everything. So deliberately switching or stretching myself in that sense, rather than just going with what I am familiar with.
So this is really rich, very, very rich. So I think that people can more fully relate to what you've just shared so far about this idea. But some people set mission statement and then it grows cobwebs, or sometimes they're just afraid to look at it because they might say, oh man, it's so disappointing. Yeah. So I guess for you is you are constantly updating, number one, your mission statement, because you are no longer the person that you were 10 years ago. Right? So obviously, as you grow, your mission statements grow with you. You can see more things, you can relate more things right now.
Yes.
It's like journaling, but journaling over a long period of time in that sense.
And in this process, it's not just words. Sometimes I also find some image that I feel connected or in a way synchronized with this mission. So I play around.
Yeah, so it could be symbols and imageries.
Yes, imagery, yes. Yeah.
Then from there, you start from there, review on a 4 monthly basis, and start visualize scenarios. Then on the daily basis, set
intentions.
Then you observe and adjust yourself to align to your vision. Okay. Yeah. I'm switching perceptual position. Okay. Pay attention to my own habits, and make a choice to act differently. So the idea is not just, I think it's a very profound one, because a lot of times people are not even aware that they have a certain pattern. They're just not self-aware. But if they are aware, then there's a choice. Because if you can't make a choice when you're not even aware in the first place, right? You act differently.
So I start looking at the habits of how I'm doing things as a starting point.
Yeah.
Then from there, I'm able to see, okay, it's an interesting recurring pattern.
Yeah.
You know,
Another name for it is called being mindful.
And not,
Yeah, another name for it is called mindfulness. Being mindful in that sense. You know what I'm saying? So this is an active form of mindfulness, that I'm not just like a zombie, right? Going to my usual mode of doing things. And then so once I'm aware, if I'm doing the thing that I feel is right, then okay, I go ahead. But if I'm not wrong, then I say I have a choice to turn back right now or to do differently. Yep. And it's through a series of process like that, then growth happens. Growth happens out of that. Yeah. So and then seize the opportunity to challenge yourself. See your point. Okay, I choose to do differently right now. It's not comfortable. I choose to do it this way. And see what, and I put myself into it. Commit myself into it.
Yeah. So I find that to develop mastery in any subject, topics, or activity, this is one that I've been deliberately introducing in whatever things that I'm learning, to even do things that I don't like. And yet it's necessary and part of the process. So let's take writing as an example. So this is that habit is one example how I'm, trying to challenge myself, even though I don't feel comfortable in the first place. But after a while of repeating it, and of course, with the intention of enjoying it rather than taking it as a chore, that makes the whole experience much more enriching.
Yeah, I think we want to move on right now.
Yes.
Because we are just really running out of time. But a very quick takeaway right now is that even in this segment itself, review your mission and visualize scenarios, set daily intentions, observe and adjust yourself, and I say this observe and adjust yourself, there is quite a big topic there, because there are a lot of things that we can do. But I'm just not going to open up that can of stuff. We're just running out of time. So the other one is paying attention to your own habits and then seizing the opportunity to challenge yourself. Just this segment alone can actually, and people just take that and make that part of their tomorrow, or challenge themselves for the next 1 week, right? On maybe just 1 month. Right? I dare to put every cent that I have, every dollar that I have right now, right, to the person who do this, and say that they actually don't see a change. That change did not come about when they do this. I put this as a challenge to everyone who's listening and tuning in tonight. And if you want to have someone to partner you in this process, you want someone to be able to coach or to mentor or to work with you as a buddy in this particular process, right? We are very happy to be able to explore that with you. Yeah, this is the process. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So we're going to talk to you about how you can actually get in touch with us to get this process going. Yeah. Okay. You can start on a very small scale. Let's start with something small scale. Yeah. The may not have to be, a mission statement and so on and so forth. It could be something like, you just want to get your act together, get yourself to move in a particular direction, to be able to access certain abilities that you have. That could be the starting point, right? Yeah. So it doesn't matter how big you start, is to start anyway.
To start somewhere, yes.
Yeah.
That's why I love it.
People get caught up with the profoundness of things, but they just don't do anything. They don't start anything, right? Okay. So the next topic is this idea about myth and trap of life purpose. So I thought that I guess it's an important learning for you. So you tell us what are some of the myth and threat that you discover?
So when initially I was starting out, when I hit those roadblocks or crossroads, I was actively, busily trying to find what is my purpose. So I've been it for at least 10 years. Then I find that, how come I'm constantly searching for it, but I have never arrived at anywhere. There could be something off with how I'm doing it. And I also tried like some of the processes out there that, this thing about finding your sweet spot, what I love, what the world needs, and what I will get paid for. That those kind of Venn diagrams.
I think it's called Ikigai.
Ikigai. I learned a lot from it. At the same time, also I experienced some
diagram, yeah.
I also experienced some limitations to it.
Yeah, and that's an important topic as well for me. Important topic. I mean, we can talk about this for this. Essentially, is that's a Western version of Ikigai. It's a Western guy who took the Ikigai and coded and defined it that in his own way versus a Western version. And actually, when you go to the Japanese, which what Ikigai is actually Japanese, and you go to the Japanese version, it tells a completely different story.
Yes.
It was just such an eye-opening event because I didn't know myself. When I discovered it was such when you hit something profound, right? Is when there is silence inside you for a couple of seconds. Nothing went on. You're just in awe.
There's no words for that.
You just felt, wow, it hits you from inside your mind and down to your heart, right? It's just silence for a while, right? So I think Rumi said it very well. Silence is the language of God. All else are translations. So I think it really captures when you hit something profound, right? It's that there's nothing going on inside. You just look at the information. Yeah, it sits well with you. And I'll put up that post again tomorrow. The true definition of Ikigai. That means you're talking about essentially the nutshell of that when you wake up in the morning and you try to make your day the best day possible, that is you are in the right place at the right time in that sense. So it's it's kind of like a very different version of the Ikigai that we see in the world. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes the things that you see out there may not be what it is. You need to go deeper. So anyway, get back to chasing what's my purpose. And so what was your part when you start to begin?
So instead of going that route, chasing, or trying to fit myself into a particular career or work or whatever, I started to participate, to experiment things, to learn to interact. So it's a very constant, proactive mode of engaging and participating in life in different manners. Only through that process, I get clearer and clearer in terms of so-called this purpose, rather than sit here and trying to think about it in the future, looking for it, fantasizing it. But it's really through getting myself to participate. It can be any direction, any path, or any topic or activity, just to start. And then through that process, getting feedback, there'll be responses that will be coming back. And that tells me, oh, okay, these are the things that I can use. It can be valuable.
Okay, so I'm just trying to put myself into the shoes of other people right now, which is when you say you started to participate in life, right? I mean, is it kind of random? random kind of participation, or is it more like you are selecting those activities to participate in?
I'm selective. Initially, it's a bit open-ended.
Okay.
As I start going into it, I realize, oh, okay, this is probably I can come back to this activity later on, because while doing it, there was a certain inclination or certain resistance. So all this little experience that I had, I also document it, because it might come in handy in the future in my development process. Then through that process, I progressively define, oh, okay, what is it that I can, so I kind of set certain boundaries around it, or to make clear what is the context I want to participate.
Okay. So if I heard you correctly, just to save us a little bit of time, started instead of trying to go for courses or models that are from certain thought leaders or whatever, and say that this is the model that you apply to find out your life purpose. Go and do tarot cards. I don't know, go and do some passion test. Go and do this test, that test, and then do this model, that model. You kind of took a path whereby you started to participate in certain activities. So, and these activities are the ones, so I want to have a little bit more conversation about those
around that. Yeah.
So give us some examples so that the audience can relate to it. But you started to go into certain activities that you are somewhat interested in, that you want to find out more, that you kind of like maybe your heart or your heart is drawn to it. You start saying, that's something that I would enjoy doing, or this is something that I find very meaningful. And you, instead of thinking about it, you go ahead and explore it. And then as you explore, you start to narrow your exploration.
Narrow mind. Yep.
Yeah. So I think I did that. That wasn't very. It wasn't what I expected, or it wasn't something that gelled with me or whatever.
Yes.
Those things that you tried, that makes you come alive. It makes you feel there's a spark, with a sense of meaning. Then you will start exploring in that direction, in that sense.
Yes.
So I got you. Could you give us an example?
So let's take like how I come to rediscover writing as one of my channel, even though it's something that I kind of like failed terribly in school.
Okay.
It was at that point in time, I know that communication is something I want to work on, but communication is such a big topic. Where do I start? So I have a rough idea around communication, and so when I started, I look at, okay, what are the different modalities of communication. So it could be, I could be looking at certain website, and I look at it. I also check in with my heart and my body. How am I? Is this something I want to try, or is something that I don't feel any connection with? So I kind of using my sensing as a way to identify what are the aspects of communication I want to develop. And then when I started reading certain books of how beautifully some of the writers able to express themselves, I noticed there's a certain level of intrigue, curiosity, and even excitement of how they actually put such beautiful works out there. So then I realized, oh, okay, probably this could be the area that I can venture into. So I took a step and just try randomly writing stuff, or just have a notebook I created to a folder to just randomly part my thoughts into message and words. And then from there, that's how I started to go much more into it. So it essentially started from a general sense of what I would say the areas that I'm weak at to begin with.
Okay. So what you're saying is that for you, the thing that kind of gave you a sense of now a direction or sense that the area that you want to explore more, or you find that yourself that in your somewhat in your element, is when you started writing, and it allows you to be, which is something that's got something to do that you have always been interested to communicate, which is, I guess what you're saying is to express yourself, be able to express some aspect of yourself, or to be able to explain certain things that you come into contact with. And then you rely on your so-called your EQ or PQ, your heart and body, to know what to do next, essentially.
Yes.
Okay. So that's your space that you are in. Okay. So, all right. I think we can always, this is actually a very rich topic here. So I'm going to stop here for a while, stop enough. And those people who want to know more can always write in, and I'm sure you'll be able to talk.
I would love to connect with them. And
So this idea about, instead of looking for what tried models out there, you started to participate, take a more active approach in trying out things that you are interested in or gravitation to. And as you're exploring it, you narrow your exploration so that you're able to get more of those things that you like, or you're getting meaning out of it. And so you give an example about writing, which is to be able to express yourself. And then so now, and then you're using your sensing to be able to say what you want to do next. So this whole process of very highly exploratory, very self-driven process, rather than passively sitting down and hopefully
waiting for things to happen.
Some kind of like magical from somewhere, or the sky open up and then send you a what we call thunder message or something. I know what my purpose is. You know what I'm saying? So it's a very engaged, consciously, and it's a conscious engagement, active process. Conscious engagement, active process. Yeah. Okay. Right. So, and we kind of started talking about this notion about sensing, using your heart and your body to sense, right? So that's just another language, a code for emotional intelligence and physical intelligence. Right? The body has intelligence, and the heart has intelligence that operates differently from the mind, from the head, right? Right? So could you explain a little bit more what you mean by evolving yourself with multiple intelligence?
So by the way, these four it can happen at the same time. I'm just trying to break it down one at a time. So spiritual intelligence, to me, how I practice it or how I tap into it, is really about examining my sort of values, sense of who I am. And a certain belief that I had about people, situations. So because these are more abstract stuff, so this to me is more of that spiritual intelligence. The invisible things that is driving me. And from there, I started to define some of the qualities that I want to express myself with. So it could be like patience. It could be sense of openness, and so on.
Okay.
Or it could be, you know, being inclusive, regardless what kind of people that I've meeting and what kind of world that they come from, the mindset and so on, to really include them rather than to say that, you know, draw a line of me versus them, or creating judgment. Yeah.
Yeah. So, are you still in the spiritual intelligence space?
Yes, this is essentially what.
Okay.
Is, yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. And
so that sets the compass or the direction how I want to.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, are you going to share with us?
Yes, there are others.
Yeah, other aspects of. Yeah.
Then from there, you know, the IQ part, the mental space.
Yeah.
Is in terms of how I'm proactively developing it. So one will be reading.
Okay.
Reading from different sources and being selective on what I read, because there's a lot of noise coming out from in the internet. So the ability to discern the materials that I come across online. And it's actually what I'm looking out is to understand the kind of mindset that is coming across those sources or materials. Also to understand that kind of, well, what kind of polarity people are in. Because, you know, certain people will say, oh, I stand for this school of thought, and the other one on the opposite side. So I'm constantly looking out for this, and the reason for that, or the value for that, is it trains me to be inclusive in a sense, and not judging people upfront based on. So I'm developing that kind of mental spectrum in myself to deal with all these different perspectives, thoughts, ideas. And seeing what seems to be repeating. And then what kind of mental strategies that will allow me to express those qualities.
Yeah. So I can see what you're saying here right now is that, which is this idea about mental intelligence, which is or intellectual quotient, right? But it doesn't gel with the way we define it here. But so it's spiritual mental, but if it points to IQ, it essentially points to IQ, right? So just give me a minute. Okay. So this idea about reading, understanding the major problem, seeing the structure, to see the different perspectives and ideas, identify patterns, develop your own process. So that is kind of like information, structuring them, seeing patterns, and then developing a mental plan.
Mental plan, yes.
Yeah, mental plan to
how to go about.
To do your things effectively, be more strategic, basically. Okay, and that's kind of like is in alignment with the company's values of emergence, to see not just set patterns, but to see patterns as they emerge in that sense, rather than just try and proven. And I think that's one of the problems that people face around the world, is that they are stuck with what they know and they're not willing to open themselves to new discoveries they're not willing to be open to see what the pattern is there. In fact, they're trying to see what they're trying to see those patterns and fit into what they know, in that sense. Yeah. So that's called emergent. It's kind of like emergent thinking in that process. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite a mouthful to discuss things like this. Yeah. But I guess we can kind of, as I said, this can be a lecture by itself.
It can be a program.
Yeah, in terms of the multiple intelligence, let's go.
So the next, how I then sort of connect or align myself emotionally. So there's a certain emotional feel of the qualities that I mentioned in the SQ portion. So it's not just a word, there's a meaning to it. So it's really about adjusting. So I use also a bit of physical intelligence, PQ, to help me with that. Adjusting my body posture, how I can use my gesture in a way that is more cohesive, more congruent. So if let's say, I want to express myself to be more compassionate, the tone of how I speak, I can moderate. Versus, if I want to be more confident, probably I will speak a little bit faster and maybe a bit louder in a sense. Yeah. So these are some of the things, the nuances that I play with.
Okay. Will you expand a little bit more in terms of what are things that you do to, what are things that you do to express or utilize your emotion intelligence, or to express your emotion intelligence?
So I started, it can be various ways, using my senses as a way to activate it. Sometimes it's through seeing certain image symbol and allow that whatever the emotions to come out.
Okay.
Sometimes it could be a certain sound or music that brings a certain flavor of that emotional tone that will support whatever the activity. So sometimes it could be a really just moving my body. So that's more of the physical side of it, to generate a certain feeling, to adjust my energy and so on.
So for you, the emotion that is about this idea about getting into the right emotional state, and it can be through some form of imagery or through some form of music to be able to get yourself to the state that you want to be in, to tune into the state that you need at the moment.
Yes.
Physical intelligence will turn those qualities that you mentioned earlier on into a physical expression.
Physical expression.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else that you want to add?
So physical expression could also be certain activity. Like for me, I do a lot of walking. And that helps me to also tap into my IQ side of it. So if I need to connect certain thoughts or ideas that I've just come across, sometimes I take a walk, using my body as a way to connect the information. And while doing that, also, I'm tuning into what's the feeling, the sense of emotion that comes with it. So then it becomes rich and multi-dimensional to me, rather than just flat piece of stuff or material. And then always prepared to have my notebook or something like that I can capture all these experiences. I can document it so that every time I can review maybe on a weekly basis or so, to track what some things that happen and what could be useful from there.
Okay. All right. Okay. So that's again, this is another topic just by itself. It's a huge topic by itself, but I think you give the essence of it. So if you were to look back, this spiritual intelligence is talking about examining, expressing your values, how to respond to people and situation. and identifying qualities that you want to express and nurture. You mentioned about inclusiveness, openness, and patience, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Okay. And then we talk about mental intelligence, this idea about reading and creating a structure, finding your own strategy, incorporating ideas, putting ideas and seeing pattern and using it to develop a strategy. Yeah. Okay. So, and then emotion, this idea about using imagery or music to be able to develop a state or adjust this emotional state that you want to be in, and physical, then turning turning those qualities into physical expression, or through physical or through physical activities, right? Be able to in somewhat get ideas or solve problems in that sense using bodily intelligence. So, as a nutshell for that. Okay, so I think it's about time we talk about getting into the 3 Ps right now, and we just run out of time. So if you could quickly run through with us right now, what are the 3 Ps that you mentioned earlier on?
So the first one is really understanding the problems on a deeper level. The problems, of course, goes with what my personal outcome that I want to work on.
And what's the second one?
Second one is about once I understand the problem, from there I expand my perspective around it through using certain questions and even putting myself into different perspective.
And what's the next one?
The third one is actually turning all this into a lifestyle practice that I can proactively work on the things that I want to work on, whether it's learning something or really to work on myself.
Okay. So the 3 Ps you're talking about is problems,
perspective, and practice.
So essentially, that's about that. That's kind of like giving people a big picture. And again, we just ran out of time. Problems that we know too much. So okay, I'm just going to get you to explain a little bit more on understanding problems at a deeper level.
There are diagnostic tools that are used to really dissect and understanding the distinction between symptoms and causes. So sometimes we tend to mix up one or the other. So that's really the gist of it.
Okay. Some form of diagnostics. I'm using some form of diagnostic models. Okay. So, and why is that important for people who are listening in right now, understanding problems at the deeper level? Why is that an important aspect of getting out of the rat race?
So, for example, when I'm in that rat race,
yeah,
I didn't realize that the things that I've been chasing after is just addressing the symptoms. For example, when I'm unhappy about certain work, things don't work out well, there's some conflict that's happening. And then I try to start sort of finding solutions to it. And my own experience is that I try a lot of things, but then it seems that I'm still unhappy with what I'm doing.
Okay, so you're saying is that without understanding the problems at a deeper level, you deal with things that are more surface.
More on the surface. Yeah.
It doesn't change the structural.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Structure that will truly make a difference. Okay, so I got you on that one. Okay, and so if you are not understanding the problems at a deeper level, then you continue to be in the rat race, or you continue to spin around in a sense, in a space. Yeah, and then what do you mean by expanding my perspectives? What do you do? Why is that? What does that entail?
So perspective is really about, from the diagnostic also it can develop, I can develop or see certain connections.
Develop what? I'm sorry.
Develop and see certain connections with what is happening, the activity, even myself, why am I reacting this way? And even things that I find is a bit contradicting, that also adds to the perspective. So rather than rejecting or trying to stay away, which tends to be my tendency, I kind of like fight the problem. I started to see what could be the other angles to look at it. So there's a lot of reframing the way I look at situations and the people and problem.
Okay. And then, okay. So the idea is that to be able to kind of like essentially find ways to look at it, look at things from a different viewpoint.
Different angle and different levels as
different
well.
levels or different viewpoints. And that can come in the form of a reframe. Sometimes it could be an outframe. You're putting yourself in the context altogether. But the idea is just to look at it that whatever problem you see right now, may not be it. There may be other ways that you don't see it yet.
Yes.
And there are activities that you go through. There are certain questions that you ask. There are different models that you can apply so that you can actually see things from a different angle. Okay. And that is important because why? What does that? What difference does that make?
A lot of time I find myself stuck in that rat race, doing a lot of things but not getting anywhere. It's because I tend to rely on what has worked for me. There's a certain perspective around it that I hold or that I believe in. And I don't question or challenge that. It may be outdated. I don't even know. So then by expanding the perspective, I'm able to generate other options, even options that I may not expect.
So I get you. The idea of trying to expand your perspective, right? It's not just a mental exercise, but so that you can act differently. You can actually find a different way, different course of action to solve your problems, or to be able to get yourself into the direction that you want to go, or to have more things on what you want in a sense.
Yes.
Right? So the different action doesn't come when you don't have a different way of looking at it.
Yes. Yep.
And then can you just elaborate a little bit more about designing daily practices?
So like, intention setting is one of them.
Okay.
And for me, because I understand myself, I have a bit more work in terms of the physical and emotional intelligence side of it. So, I have different exercises that I can do, whether it's in the morning or at the end of the day. It could be things like certain breathing, how I, deliberately train myself to breathe in a certain manner, visualization. And now I also use a bit of my voice. So like I'm connecting what I'm seeing using a certain sound, typing those voice and a certain posture. So things like that I can get myself engaged rather than stagnant, because I constantly go back to my default habits.
Okay.
And daily practice also include other lifestyle choices like diet, the kind of community that I want to stay in touch with, that supports what I'm doing or is in alignment, and even the kind of websites or platforms I want to subscribe to.
So here you are just basically talking about now understanding problems at deeper level, some form of diagnostic, expanding your perspective so that you can see a different angle and draw different ideas from it so that you can act differently. That's the key. And then designing daily practice, intention setting, and so on. Exercises like breathing, visualization, changing your posture, changing your diet, to be with to choose the kind of people that you want to spend time with, because they are in the activities that reinforces on certain principles or certain
qualities
that you want to be able to nurture yourself into. So that's when you start talking about beginning to start building a more fulfilling journey and experience, or the idea about moving, not just defining your own success, but living that that so-called that life that you deem success on a more active level, that you are actually living it and growing with that your own definition of success. Identify your own definition of success and then living that life of your own success through this process that you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. Certainly, it's a rich, very rich conversation. We are 1.5 hours into the sharing, and even though I'm trying my best to shorten it, right, and it's just and there's just so much things to unpack. So I just want to say that we have really go beyond our time, and those people who are staying with us, certainly we want to thank them for up to this point in time. They're asking a whole bunch of questions, but all I can say right now is this. Next slide is I often tell people, right, you might just be one conversation away from getting the answers that you need. And this comes from a space that I'm sure you can relate, Alfred, that many of the so-called new perspectives or connection that we make, or the answers that opens up for us, or we find something very beautiful, or the very thing that unlocks our mind and our problems, right, can come from what we call a conversation. And that conversation is not with yourself. That conversation we're talking about is with someone else who has a different worldview, different perspective from you, who can ask you very good questions to be able to channel your reflection and your discovery in a more productive way, in that sense. So, as I said earlier on, there are many gems that came up from this conversation, and if people would just take a portion of that and start working on it, right, a month or two from now, they would actually experience their life very differently. And there's no question in my mind that what we have shared here is going to change lives. It's going to help people to really talk about getting out of the rat race. I think getting out of the rat race is just a catchphrase. The real thing behind it, I think what we're saying is that we stop trying to define an ideal life according to the perspective of other people, or to get outside of the water that we are swimming in. We live in a culture that we are not even aware that that's the water that we are swimming in, and start to really pursue that our own definition of happiness, our own definition of success, and not just by saying what we call nice quotes, but it's a process here. So you have to share with us a process of how you got yourself outside of what we call the world's definition into your own definition, and you took your own definition and turn it into a process,
lifestyle, and
process, which is in short, a multi-intelligence approach into that means designing and enriching your mind, your heart, your body, which is your actions and activities, and your spiritual definition of what your spiritual intelligence, which is your definition of what gives you meaning and purpose. Right. So I encourage people, those who are still with us right now, to pick up your phone. There's a QR code there, and then scan it, and it can straightaway bring you to the page that you can type in some of the questions that you have for us, and I will make sure that Alfred will answer your question.
Yes, I love to.
A great conversation can start from there and start to talk about what are some of the things that they can actually start asking you and start incorporating, right? Some of these things that you talk about that has absolutely worked for you to start working for them. And they can actually be in somewhat coached by you to go into the process, or in some way, you can also mentor them because you're coming from your own experience. You'll be able to share some experience with them as well. So it's going to be a very, very productive evening, really a lot of gems. And I know there will be a broadcast tomorrow, and people can share that broadcast.
Yes,
it's going to be on YouTube as well.
Yeah, he will be on Facebook and probably on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Have a good night's rest. Tomorrow is another day for you. I just want to say that your work with us is invaluable. We treasure you, not just me. Everyone in the team treasures you for who you are, for the kind of showing up at the right time, right place, by doing things that matter the most in a very quiet manner, in a very quiet way, without being loud. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Yep.
Yeah, and I guess we can actually schedule a conversation like that. Conversation like that.
I look forward to the next one. Yes.
Couple of weeks. Okay. I'll see you.
Okay. Yeah. Good night.
Good night. Yeah.